Have you ever gone on YouTube to learn the next mixing or music production tip, trick, and hack? And after watching a couple videos, you think to yourself, I know this stuff already. And so you close out of YouTube, maybe you open up the DAW and go to start making music. And then you realize that the same thing that always happens is happening yet again. Your music still sounds amateur. No matter what you do or how many YouTube videos you watch, you feel like you're just not getting any better. And you get frustrated or maybe confused and a little upset. And then maybe you leave a couple nasty comments on those videos you just watched about how there's no new information here and you're holding this stuff back from me. And maybe you believe that they're actually holding information back from you. Maybe they're using this one specific plugin that they're not going to tell you about. And you start feeling a little bit hopeless, and a little frustrated, and a little angry. You ever been there? Well, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell a lot of my students, which is don't make the mistake of thinking that you know everything. And I'll explain what I mean by know here in just a second. But in order to explain really what I mean, I got to bring up a story with a client that I was just working with, and they're totally cool with me sharing the story. So the client and we were talking back and forth, and I was coaching him on music production, and we were going through, and he was like, "Man, the stuff that you're telling me, I already know. Like, I already know all this stuff." He's like, "I feel like there's something that I'm missing, something I don't quite understand." He goes, I know that I'm supposed to pick one really good sound, and I'm supposed to make sure that I leave enough headroom on my master bus and have my static mix. I know all this stuff." He's like, "I just feel like there's something that I'm missing. Maybe there's like a plugin you're using that I don't have. Like, what's going on here?" So I said, let's open up one of your most recent sessions and let's dive into it ourselves. And so I opened up his session and I realized that he had like 8 or 9 different kick tracks layered on top of one another. He had 7 or 8 different snare tracks. He had 4 or 5 different bass layers. He had stereo imaging plugins, like plugins that turn mono signals into stereo signals, and just pushed into infinity and causing a bunch of phasing issues. He had not enough room on his master bus, let alone even somewhat of a static mix buildup. And so after looking at the session, I asked him, I said, "If you feel like you know everything, how come you're not doing any of it?" And that's because there's a difference between knowledge and skill. And so I'll get to that here in just a second. He had the brain knowledge of, yeah, I'm supposed to do this stuff, but he wasn't actually applying it. So after I deleted half of his tracks, or well over half of his tracks, things started clearing up even more. I took off well over half of his plugins and things started sounding better. I actually set up a nice static mix, left some headroom on the master bus, so that way things didn't sound weird and pumpy. All of this stuff started clearing up, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this sounds so much better." And I'm like, yes, because we need to apply what we actually have learned. And so the difference between knowledge and skill isn't as simple as just applying what you know, because you can know something and still feel like you're applying it, but you don't actually truly know it. You don't know it intrinsically. And so there's a difference between knowledge and skill. So I get very keen on defining words. I really like the idea of defining words and how other cultures define words and how other languages define words. And I really like to know that kind of stuff because I like to know how we think, because we think with words. And so if we can change how we think about the words, we can change how we think. And so one very interesting definition of knowledge is actually in the Bible. It's in Hebrew. And whether you believe the Bible is true or not doesn't matter. The concept remains the same. The word knowledge in the Bible in Hebrew most translates closest to the modern day word skill. So the word knowledge in Hebrew closely translates to the modern day word skill. So Solomon was a very knowledgeable man, very wise, very wealthy, very knowledgeable. But what did that knowledge mean? That means he had skills. Have you ever seen somebody that they're just so skilled, things just seem easy to them? They open up the DAW and start making music and things just start sounding great instantly, or maybe they're really good at cooking and it just feels like they just throw things together and they just intrinsically know. They do all of these kinds of things. Maybe they're a painter or an artist or a songwriter, and they're just doing these things that's like, how in the world are you doing it so well? It looks like it's so easy to you. And it looks like it's easy to them because it is easy to them. They've gotten that skill. They've turned that knowledge into a skill. And so how I like to define knowledge now, because I like to keep knowledge and skill separately for my own understanding. And these aren't definitions you're going to see in Webster's dictionary. These are like my own working definitions because I like having definitions of words that mean I can go do something with that. So knowledge, my working definition of knowledge, is the accumulation of information. So that is reading books, that is watching YouTube videos, that is enrolling in courses, that is getting help from someone specifically, that is like reading blogs online, that is like the accumulation of information. I'm just reaching out and trying to grab as much information as I possibly can. That is knowledge. And then skill, my working definition of skill, is the ability to perform a task without conscious effort. Because when somebody's skilled, it looks like they're just doing it. It's because they are. It's like they're barely using any of their conscious resources. So how do I transform this knowledge that I now have into skill? Well, that's where it gets a little tough, because it's not just applying what you know. There's a bit more to that, because if you just knew everything and then just immediately went and did it, you'd get the results that you were looking for. But we already kind of addressed at the beginning of this video that you feel like you know everything, but you still feel like you're not getting the results that you're looking for out of it. So there's 3 ways that I like to transform the knowledge that I have into a skill. And so the first thing is I pick one thing at a time and go through that. If I am wanting to learn music production, I take all of music production. And what are the miniature skills that I got to learn inside of music production? Okay, so I got to learn mixing. Okay, that's a smaller subset. Okay, so I got to learn EQ and compression. That's a smaller subset. EQ and very specific type of EQ and only cutting. And so like now I'm down to like this very small thing that I can tackle one at a time. And I can start developing these little things as skills and start stacking them on top of one another. I start becoming the like EQ guy. Now I know all about EQ because I've sat down and actually practiced EQ. Now I know compression. Now I know saturation. Okay, so now I know reverb and delay, and now I know all of this other stuff, and now I can kind of blend things together, and now I can consider myself a mix engineer. I know how to mix a song now. And so then you just keep finding these little skills along the way, keep stacking them one on top of another until eventually you're a music producer, you're an artist releasing their own music, and you can go so on and so forth. You are a label gathering artist underneath you and having like a massive portfolio of music. I mean, you can continue to stack these skills on top of one another almost indefinitely. And so picking one thing at a time eliminates the overwhelm and gives you one specific thing to do. The second thing that I do is I get consistent with what I do. I pick one thing, for example, EQ, and I get super consistent with that EQ. Every single day or every single week for at least a few hours, I open up the EQ and I pick one, just recommended digital one, just like the stock EQ, graphic EQ that you have in your DAW is going to work just fine. Open that up and start sweeping around the frequencies, learning where things are. I'm going to spend an entire day learning what 100 hertz sounds like, 200 hertz, 300, 400, and all the way up through this frequency spectrum. And then I'm going to pick the next day learning how to cut those frequencies to eliminate the mud or eliminate harshness. I'm going to spend the next day learning how to boost certain frequencies that sound super pleasurable to my ears. And then after the end of a week, I'm going to be really stinking good at EQ, like way better than most people are. And so then I can move on to compression and move on to the next thing. And so I pick one thing, I get super consistent. The third thing that I do, and this is a straight up hack, is getting help from peers or mentors. One of the best things that I've ever done is get around other people who are doing the same thing that I want to do. And that's why I love, like, if you enroll in a course and it has a community, use that community. Like, use it, get inside of it, share your music with people, ask them for help, ask them for advice, help them as well. And you guys can be like feeding each other, getting yourself around other people. I love the fact that the internet has given us the ability to have communities now. I love it. And so use that to your advantage and get around other people. You can surround yourself with those kind of people. When I was building my course, I knew I needed a community element alongside with it, because that is like, you can get the information through the course and through the material and stuff like that. And you have the step-by-step system, but like, you don't like know it until you apply it and you start getting help from other people and from other peers. And so we now know what knowledge is. We now know what skill is. We know how to transform that knowledge into skill. But how do I know? You're probably thinking, okay, Andrew, this is great, right? But like, how do I know whether I need more information, more knowledge, or whether I need to transform that knowledge into skill? So there's this really helpful framework that I've been using for a little while that's just been helping me a lot. And I have this sign on my wall, in fact, is, do I need more education or do I need more execution? And I just love that so much. And so the thing is, it's a balance. You have to have education. You have to have that knowledge. You have to watch those videos and read the books and do the thing. But you also have to apply it as well. And so you have to find this balance of like, what are you doing too much of? And can you shift the pendulum the other way? And so what I've done is I found like if I'm feeling like two separate emotions, then I know what to do next. And so the first emotion is hopelessness. If I feel hopeless, like I just don't feel like my mixes are going to get any better. I don't know what to do. I don't know why my music is sounding this way. I just feel hopeless. That hopeless feeling is a great like door. Instead of feeling like upset about that, you can actually look at that as a positive thing and see that there's a door that you need to walk through, which is gathering information. If you feel hopeless, it means that you have lack of options or lack of information for those options. And so if you feel hopeless and you feel like I just don't know what to do, information, gather some information. The next thing is overwhelm. If I have overwhelm, that means I have a lack of priorities and I need to focus on one. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do in music production. I have to learn how to write songs. I have to learn how to produce them. I have to learn how to mix them. I have to learn how to master them. Oh my gosh, now I have to learn how to promote it, how to make album artwork. I got to learn all of this stuff, how to upload it to DistroKid and how to run ads to it or how to make content to boost oh my gosh, there's so much going on. I feel so overwhelmed. Boom. Make a list of priorities. What's the first thing you want to do? I want to learn how to write better music. Awesome. Let's gather information around that and let's start applying that specifically and move on. And so hopelessness, lack of knowledge, lack of information, a lack of options, and overwhelm is an overwhelm of information, overwhelm of options. And that means you don't have a good list of priorities. You haven't prioritized properly. And so now, of course, this is just when it comes to like learning a specific skill. There's a lot of times in life where you feel hopeless or you feel overwhelmed and there's just a lot going on. And like, even though you have a lot of priorities, you can't just take things off the priority list just because I only can handle 2 or 3 priorities at a time. I'm talking specifically for skills. This isn't necessarily complete life advice here on this channel. But if you're looking to acquire the knowledge of and the skill of music production, then picking one thing at a time, being consistent with it, and getting help from other people is super, super helpful. So anyway, I hope this video helped you a lot. And don't make the mistake of thinking that you know everything. I don't know everything, and I will never know everything, because the day I know everything is the day I stop making music. There are no rules to making music. There are certain rules that you can follow to get you certain results. But if we followed the rules all the time, we would never have heavy sounding metal guitars. We would never have the kinds of stuff that we have now if we never broke the rules. The whole point of distorted guitars is they broke the rules. They turned it up so loud it was distorting the speakers and distorting the amp. And we called it good. And we're like, yeah, this sounds good. Let's keep doing that. And we were breaking rules. I love it. I love breaking rules. I love making music. And I hope to see you in the next one. And now, as always, go create.